God, Sam, please don't say anything stupid. Please don't say anything stupid. He's trying to explore the nuances of his book. He's trying to explore the nuances of why things are so slow whenever the Democrats are trying to get things passed, okay? He's trying to explore what I'm guessing, okay? What I'm guessing is the democratic red tape, okay? Of all these little things, all right? Please don't fuck this up, okay? For the love of God.
I guess like four sort of main silos, as far as I can tell. Like we have the regulation and bureaucratic red tape, and this is a problem both in terms of like building infrastructure and to some extent within the context of housing. There are that housing is also addressed by like local, I guess, incumbent groups that have power there. The infrastructure, again, some of that bureaucratic process is a function, and we'll get into this, is a function of environmental regulations that end up getting abused in some fashion. And then in the context of like of science and innovation, it is a sort of a risk-averse funding. But let me, before we go into some of the specifics, from your perspective, because I've been reading a lot of the, there's a lot of reviews of the book out there. It's also
have you read the book?
I have. Well, I've listened to the book. Let's put it that way.
That's as good.
Close enough.
And
oh, so there is an audiobook. Okay, I'm probably going to be listening to the audiobook then. Fuck it, I'll do that.
I like your read better than Derek's. Okay, but. But I've listened to both.
They're exactly as good. All right, if you that just gives you a sense of at what level we're talking.
That's a different critique. But yes, I have read the book, and I've also read there's a tremendous amount of reviews about the book.
What is your critique of the book? I want to answer your critique of the book.
Well, I will get to that. Okay. I will get to that. But from your perspective, is this a policy or a political book?
Oh, I don't think you can separate those two.
Okay,
I mean,
so
you know my career.
Wait, what the fuck? What does he mean by this? Is this a policy or is this a political book? What does that mean? Okay.
Policy book from way back, but I think something that has always been central to the way I understand that is policy, politics, and process. And I think this is very much a book about process and proceduralism are all intertwined. The idea that you can peel them apart, that you could say, oh, this bucket is policy, this bucket is politics, is not at all how I look at that question.
Yeah, and I guess we'll start with the policy side first. But broadly, my critique is there seems to be an absence of, well, I think the culprits that you've chosen in some instances are correct, but broadly speaking, there's an absence of analysis of power dynamics, I think. That and the interplay of money and politics.
Oh. Oh no. Here we go.
Politics, or I should say power in our society, I think is problematic. I mean, I think that, look, there have been, questions about specific policies and assumptions. I've read critiques about your assessment of why China is able to do certain things and whatnot. But and I also think the power questions really filter through a lot of what you perceive to be.
And by the way, this is what leftists do. Okay, I was really praying for Sam Seder to not bring up any stupid lefty points, but he just did, okay? So in case you guys are not familiar with the way that leftists like talking about things, they like to talk about things through the lens of power structure, okay? The oppressor and the oppressee, the predator and the victim. So what they do is that they will commonly compare things in the terms of like, the oppressor is always in the wrong because they have more power, and the oppressee is always in the right because they have less power. And everything that the oppressee does that is wrong technically can be a fault that is attributed to the oppressor. And everything that the oppressor does right is something that they are supposed to do because they are the ones with more power. So this is why it's such a bad way of looking at things, because it's not necessarily true in either direction, right? Otherwise, you will have leftists who are essentially arguing that bedtime, going to bed at 8 p.m. or going to bed at 9 p.m. is a form of fascism or something, right? So this is why, this is why Sam Seder should really avoid talking about things in this way, because he begins to see things through the lenses of these leftist related things, which I don't think he was looking through maybe like some time ago. I don't know. Yeah, okay. What's the better way of looking at things? A case by case basis and based on, I don't know, like policy, anything else but this power structure kind of thing. Science, I guess, statistics, that kind of stuff, right? Because at some point, you will throw out science and statistics in favor of this leftist way of looking at things.
Problematic. And then I think, broadly, I think it's also difficult to understand like how this is going to function as a political question. But we will get to all
the
of that.
second. We'll do the second in a minute.
But let's do the policy.
Let me talk about power. Let me talk about power. I have been interested to see this critique develop. And I just had Zephyr teach out on my show. There's an episode with her and Shoikat Chakrabarti called Abundance in the Left that I think people would be interested to hear sort of do the power debate at some length.
Here, I'll put it in a really simple term, okay? I'll put it really simply. You know how when it comes to Israel versus Palestine, leftists will oftentimes say, oh, we should just get rid of the entire state. Okay, well, we need to have like a policy that's done first. No, we need to get rid of the entire state. Wait, what do you mean? What do you mean? That's not an actionable item. That's not an actionable item. What do you mean? We need to get rid of the entire state. What do you mean? What do you mean by that? Like, because they try to focus on the end result so much, they don't know how to do the next step. That's what I'm saying, right? So when it comes to things such as in this example, it's like, oh, well, just dismantle the entire power structure. But what policies would be the best thing to pass next time? Well, just dismantle the entire power structure. Well, that's incredibly unproductive to say, right?
I think this has been very revealing to me.
God, I love that your Destiny syntax coded. I hate you.
About what my friends on the left, and I think of myself usually as on the left, though, liberal, not a leftist, I guess, mean when they say power.
Sam is not that kind of lefty, though. In this specific debate, we'll see. But when he begins to describe power, I'm already getting red flags from this conversation. But we will see, okay? We will see.
I think this is a book entirely about power. But it is a book that treats power highly situationally. So there is a structure of power that arranges itself around, say, a housing development in San Francisco. That is a different structure of power than arranges itself around the question of can you build interstate transmission lines, which is a different structure of power than arranges itself around the question of can you site rural broadband and build that in the way that you want to, which is a different structure of power than you see in a bunch of the other cases in the book. And one thing we are attempting to do over and over and over again is get extremely granular about what is happening. So one thing that bothers me about the power analysis that I hear on the left, let's take housing, because I always think it's very important to ground things in like a specific case. Sure. Texas builds more housing than California. It builds more housing than New York. Okay. When people move to Austin and Houston and Dallas, they build homes. When people move to San Jose and San Francisco and Los Angeles, they don't. Is your view, do you find it a credible view to say that the issue is Texas has solved the corporate power problem, but California is permeable to corporate power and dominated by oligarchy in a way that Texas, or for that matter, Florida, is not?
Well, I don't know if it's necessarily, I think it's not necessarily corporate power. I think what we're talking about is money. I think we're just talking about money.
So
and
Texas has solved the money in politics problem, but California does not.
Well, I can tell you that, like, if you want to compare, let's say, San Francisco to Houston, right? You just have a lot more space in Houston. You have a lot more money in San Francisco. And so the power that rests with the money is more concentrated, literally, right? And has the ability in those instances to stop this housing project or that housing project. Like, look at.
But things aren't just about money, though, right? You can have all the money in the world, but if the laws are constantly preventing things from being done, the money does not matter, period. Even, like, I'm just so confused. Power isn't just money. Power is also political power, the willpower that it takes to get things done. And I would understand this because I have a little bit of background in this. I understand, okay, that things in California are slow because it's designed to be slow. Because California, in a way, is designed to be methodical, careful. However, because it is designed like that, that is one of the flaws of California. It's really hard to get things passed. It's really hard to make things actually happen in California because of the restrictions. We've been trying to get rid of a zoning law for decades. Right? We've been trying to get rid of zoning laws for decades. And yet, to this day, no amount of money can buy away zoning laws. So it's not about just the money, it's about the willpower, it's about the NIMBYism versus YIMBYism, it's about opinions, right? So I'm afraid that Sam Seder's lost in the sauce.
Austin, for instance, you bring up Austin. In the course of Austin, and this was I read this in the
like I don't want to be too mean here. Okay, I don't want to be too mean here, but it feels as though Sam lacks a fundamental understanding of basic politics. Anybody who is like good at politics would understand that not everything is about the money, right? That's like politics 101, FYI. So you're against zoning laws? Generally, yes. Yeah, when it comes to the housing crisis, yes.
Because obviously I'm not studying Austin or San Francisco for that matter. But Joe Wiesenthal wrote, that his observation about Austin was that it was cheap, and then it got very expensive. Then there was, and it was a function of costs went up, rents went up. It became expensive there.
Rents have gone down in Austin because they built so much.
They built so much.
I really want to hold on what you said the first time.
But
San Francisco has concentrated money in a way that
there was no change in the building codes, for instance. Like the argument that
the building code responded in Austin. So you can just go look. I mean, I don't know if you guys are able to pull up data on the show and show it, but just go pull it up if we can. You can search Fred housing start.
I mean, zoning laws protect you from getting a racetrack next to your house, but zoning laws also prevent people from, it's also what established the suburban dead zones, right, in Los Angeles and across California as well, right? Is also part of zoning laws, right?
Both. In Austin and San Francisco. You could just do this in general. You can look at this analysis across blue and red cities.
But
what the difference? Hold on, let me just. I want to go through this example, but we can go through a bunch of them. Houston doesn't have a
I know there's nuance. I wouldn't say being against zoning laws in general is helpful. Yeah, but that's why I said in general, right? Because there are probably specifics in which I would be in favor of, right?
zoning code. That's why it's easier to build there. I mean, I was talking to a developer there and he said, look, the thing everybody knows about Houston, if you're a developer, is it's a bad place to be a homeowner. It's a good place to be a developer. And this is what I mean when I say the whole book in a way is about power. That in these procedural questions, in this question of how do you get housing approved,
Problem with zoning laws, in my personal experience, is it one thing that you do seem to be able to buy. Local developers get zoning changed. Now I live in the house from. I don't quite know what you're saying there.
what we have created in many blue cities is a lot of veto points. And that veto point can be used by corporate power. It can be used by moneyed
Used to be a
interests. It
forest.
can be used by local homeowners who are not
Okay.
power in the way we would normally think of them, but sure as hell are power when you're thinking about whether or not to build housing. It can be used by all sorts of players. And so I think that one of the places where I quite diverge from some of my other friends on this is that I think when you create this level of proceduralism, this level of veto points, they get captured by interests over time. And that is a place where power can pool. Now, I think the place where I probably part, just to finish the thought, I think the place where I probably part is that I think that the left is often very attentive to power when it is coming from certain recognized villains, and much less attentive to power when it is coming from people who might in other contexts look like allies or just be local homeowners. But that can also be real power wielded in a problematic way.
Well, but you listed off three entities that have power: corporate power, moneyed interests, and homeowners. And I would suggest to you that in all three of those that you just listed, that money is ultimately the controlling factor. So for instance, I can
It's not. What is he saying? This is just like straight up not true. Dude, oh my god. Like, you guys have no idea how false this is. Like, I can't believe he just shamelessly said this. What is a controlling factor? Political willpower. Not money. Political willpower. All right? Enough awareness from the people to get things done, and enough good policy propositions that get people motivated to support these policies, right? Because everywhere that housing crisis is, it suffers from a lack of political willpower, okay, to actually get things done. How do you measure political willpower? I don't fucking know. Not by dollars.
tell you, like, I don't know San Francisco, I don't know Austin, I know Worcester, Mass. And I can tell you that during urban renewal, we had, there was an entire neighborhood that was completely, I don't know if you've ever been to Worcester, had gone through 290. There was an entire neighborhood called Laurel Clayton, I think it was, that ended up dumping people into a housing project, Plumley Village. And it was all run by the Worcester Redevelopment Authority. It was completely streamlined. None of the other, what we would call today groups. There was no equity involved in this, or equitable justice or anything like this. And the neighborhood was completely destroyed because the input only essentially came from this big insurance company and the Worcester Redevelopment Authority, which was essentially owned by the same type of people. And I only know about this because a buddy of mine was homeless in high school because of how much destruction generationally it had created as a result of that. And so when you list off those three elements of power, in my mind, those are all moneyed interests. Those local homeowners, I'm sure there are stories of low-income people who own homes in an area that hasn't been redeveloped, is able to stop building. But I would imagine those are very far and few between.
And I think we should be in agreement, right? If this is the case you're making, then I think we should be in agreement because there's no doubt that
I'm saying it's moneyed interest.
It's sometimes money interest for sure, right?
Well, what is it the
But
other
let
times?
me finish the thought,
Okay.
and then you can give me your rebuttal. When you create these highly legalistic systems, the people with the money to hire lawyers and lobbyists are going to be more capable within them. And so the structure of a society that begins to bury so much in bureaucracy, where you have to know when to show up to the planning meeting and you have to know who the city council members are, like it begins to structurally favor.
Do you guys notice how Ezra Klein is trying to get down to the specifics? Do you notice that the things that he's saying isn't necessarily about money? Who the city council members are. Maybe you have a city council member who is especially ticked off, who is especially focused on, I don't know, Wendy's parking lots or something. Or, you know, another city council member who really, really likes retirement homes to be built in their particular district, right? The thing is that in order to get these kinds of things done, you have to know the specific personalities of these specific politicians. You can't just hand wave everything and then just go, oh yeah, everything is about money. Everything is about whether or not money is concentrated, right? Well, if that is the case, then why hasn't things been done yet, right? I mean, it's a truth that they believe that is already self-contradicting, right? Because think about it, if what Sam Seder says is true and it's all about money, why hasn't things been done yet, right? Why things haven't been done yet is again because there is just simply not enough power. But it's almost as if there is one variable that he is missing from the equation. I think money matters. I think money is important, okay? But money isn't the only thing that matters. And I think it's really important to recognize that, okay?
Those who can navigate that society. So when we talk about things like upzoning, where we want to make it possible to build more houses in an area, like everybody knows it is.
And by the way, this is why I'm so shocked by what Sam Seder is saying here. Just simply because what he's saying is politics 101. We're not talking about some kind of advanced political macroeconomic you know, kind of thing that's going on, right? We're talking about something that is fundamentally extremely simple to understand, okay? It's extremely simple to understand that money isn't everything in politics, period. Period, right? Period. It's, yeah, yeah. Unless palms are getting grease, and even then you have to know whose palms to grease. Yep.
It's almost impossible to upzone a rich area. And that is because they are able to bend this process to their will. Now, you can take a place like California,
All right, well,
right?
let me address that. I mean, I get that point there. And I think that is what worries, I don't know about other people, but
Yes, I've heard
that's the
about that,
type of thing that worries me, because the argument you've just made is almost identical to the one that I would have every week with Tim Carney, who I know, you know, back in the day, which is an idea that the problem with wealthy influence, and if you and I agree, then it is money. The problem with it is
we don't agree that it's all money.
Okay,
I mean, money is one mechanism of influence.
But it is, I think it is the biggest one. Would you agree with that?
It depends on the issue. So look, there are a bunch of these issues. Where
okay, well,
money
let me
ends up
finish my point about Tim Carney. He would say that you need to have less government. That way it cannot be as corrupted or manipulated by moneyed interests. Now, I don't know if you think that money is the problem 51% of the time or 30% of the time.
I don't think categorically asking that question is, but here, let me say where I disagree with Tim Carney, because maybe it'll clarify where maybe you and I don't agree. Tim wants a less capable state. I want a more capable state. Tim wants a state that does fewer things. I want a state capable of doing more things, including the things it has already promised to do. So when I look at California high-speed rail, I work backwards and I say, what the fuck happened that the state of California could not build high-speed rail, which they can do in Japan, they can do in China, they can do in Europe? Tim looks at it and says, they shouldn't be trying to build high-speed rail. And so the disagreement I have with Doge, with a lot of different things, with a lot of my friends on the right, is they want to reduce state capacity. I come at this from as a liberal who wants the state to accomplish very difficult things, decarbonizing the economy,
Uh-oh, you just said liberal. Okay, that's Sam's trigger word. Be careful, buddy.
building enough affordable housing, including, by the way, public housing, building mass public infrastructure, things like high-speed rail or the Big Dig or the Second Avenue subway here in New York City. And what I see is a state failing to accomplish its goals.
Right.
Now, they would say, don't fucking try. I would say, fix the state. And one issue with the state is that it has become so highly regulated, not in terms, I find that when I use the term deregulation, like people's brains turn off because they think of deregulation as something that the state does for the market. But no player is more highly regulated than the state itself, often by Republicans, often because of power in the way that you would define it. But I think a lot of liberals, a lot of leftists have, one, and this is my critique going backwards, ceased to see this, but two, they don't take state failure seriously. And when something like California high-speed rail happens or rural broadband, they sort of move on instead of saying, why are we not delivering? We are the people.
I feel like what Sam Seder supports is he would rather have no BART at all than having a flawed BART system. Is Lynn still in the chat? Because I don't know if Lynn is still in the chat, but like she has moved to California and she has started taking the BART and she fucking loves it. Okay, apparently, according to her. Okay. It's way better to have a BART system, right? The subway, right? The railway, not the restaurant, like the actual underground railway, okay? It's way better to have it than not to have it, right? And it's really as simple as that. You can't have perfection at step one. You can't have perfection at step one, right? Yeah.
Believe in government. People are pissed at government for a reason. How do we make government deliver?
See, and I think and I think in terms of results, I think you and I are largely aligned. But I think the problem is, and you bring up Doge, and it's ironic that you and Carney will approach it in a very similar way, but anticipate different outcomes. But that being aside, I mean, I think that
what Sam would definitely agree, you can't expect perfection on step one. Well, that's literally what Ezra Klein is arguing. What Sam is saying is, money is everything, money is power, and what a lot of, okay, maybe we'll see, but what a lot of leftists believe, okay, because I have seen later on in this debate where Sam begins to argue that it's not good to take a flawed step one. That's what he said.
is where, people
They actually discussed the Cali train in a bit more detail the next day. I haven't watched that one.
get a little bit
But see, I don't think we're approaching it similarly. I think
well,
it's at a level of abstraction, it's similar, and then you go granular and it's not at all.
But see, this is what we're talking about. See,
Yeah.
like it's their policy and politics are in the same place. So we have a level of abstraction, we have a level of granular, right? And the point is the way that these two commingle, I think becomes problematic where these two things meet, because your identification of the primary problem, right? I mean, this is the point. Like you don't address moneyed interest per se in the book. The primary problem is, I mean, if you just do a summary of the book, primary problem has to do more with the regulation and the handcuffing the state has done of itself. But the state doesn't do it itself. Like all of this handcuffing comes from a place, and it's either moneyed interest or it's not. And I have no doubt that at different times.
This is where.
Yeah, but by focusing on this so-called money interest so hard, you're missing the forest for the trees. Sometimes you have to work within the same flawed system in order to make something happen, and that's fine. Sometimes not everything is going to be perfect with the system itself, and you're gonna have to find ways to improvise, right? So, yeah.